Welcome to This Explainer. Okay, let's dive right in. I want you to just take a second and think about your absolute biggest, most painful failure. You know, the kind of disaster that just makes you want to throw your hands up and say, I'm done. Well, what if I told you that everything we assume about our worst failures might actually be completely backwards? Today, we're unpacking some fascinating insights from our source material that literally reframe how we view devastation and defeat. Honestly, by the end of this, you might just look at your deepest setbacks in an entirely new light. So, what if your worst disaster was exactly what saved your life? There's this incredible parable shared by Billy Graham that illustrates this perfectly. Imagine a man, right? He's the sole survivor of a terrible shipwreck, completely stranded on a deserted island. He painstakingly builds this tiny little hut, salvaging whatever meager belongings he could from the wreck just to survive. Every single day, he's praying for rescue, anxiously scanning the empty horizon. But then, one day, he comes back from searching for food, only to find his hut completely engulfed in flames. Everything he has left in the whole world is just reduced to ash. For him, it's the ultimate tragedy, absolute crushing despair. But then, something absolutely incredible happens. Right after the fire, a ship arrives at the island. The man is completely stunned. The captain walks up to him and delivers this wild message. "We saw your smoke signal and hurried here." I mean, wow. So the crucial point here is the very fire that devastated him, the fire that destroyed his absolute last worldly possessions, was the exact mechanism used to signal his rescue. He thought he was looking at his total ruin, but he was actually looking at his salvation. The disaster was literally a blessing in disguise. This brings us to Section 1, Lincoln's Path of Failures. Let's look at how this actually plays out in the real world with someone universally recognized as successful, but who was intimately familiar with crushing defeat, Abraham Lincoln. Born to a poor farming family, Lincoln had barely 1 year of formal education. In his youth, he suffered the tragic loss of his mother. Moving into adulthood, he tries to enter the Illinois legislature, and he fails. He even failed as a shopkeeper, which, is a surprising little fact for someone whose face is literally on the penny. Then he goes into business with a partner, only for that business to completely go under, leaving him with a massive debt that took years to pay off. Later on, he runs for the U.S. Senate, not once but twice, and loses both times. The sheer volume of personal and professional disasters this man endured is breathtaking. Almost anyone else would have thrown in the towel halfway through this timeline. And this perfectly illustrates the choice we all have when facing defeat. You can either view failure as a stumbling block, like a literal dead end that stops your life's progress right in its tracks, or you can view it as a stepping stone, a necessary, albeit highly painful process for a better future. Lincoln consciously chose the stepping stone route. Despite an absolute avalanche of rejections, he leaned heavily on his faith and a deep-seated belief that he had a divine calling. He didn't let those continuous failures define him. He let them refine him. He used those seemingly insurmountable stumbling blocks as the very stepping stones that eventually walked him straight into the presidency. Now we're moving on to Section 2, the price of dreams. Because transforming a stumbling block into a stepping stone is not easy, and achieving a massive dream always requires a heavy cost. So what's the significance of the number 20? According to the text cited in our source, 20 is the staggering number of years Jacob worked for his uncle, just for the right to marry the woman he loved. 20 years of hard daily labor. But the text highlights something really profound about human endurance here. Because of his immense love and the absolute clarity of his dream, those 2 long decades actually felt like only a few days to him. When your dream is true and clear, it gives you the unbelievable endurance to pay whatever heavy price is required. But that level of endurance requires a very specific mindset. You have to look past the obstacle. You have to look beyond the hill to the promised land. This perfectly connects Jacob's ancient endurance to modern heroes, like Martin Luther King Jr. Dr. King constantly looked past the immediate, deeply painful obstacles of his time. He didn't ignore the struggle, right? But he fixed his eyes and the eyes of his people on the hope of the promised land just over that hill. To successfully pay the price of your dream, your vision has to extend way past your current failure. Which leads us right into Section 3, faith and second chances. So what happens when we inevitably trip and fall on our own paths? The source material emphasizes that we need a vital spiritual safety net and a supportive community. This dynamic is beautifully captured in the account of John chapter 21. It shows us that even the most devoted, passionate people fail. The disciple Peter famously and totally failed Jesus in his absolute darkest hour. But here's the amazing part highlighted in the text. When Jesus returns, he doesn't scold Peter. He doesn't shame him or cast him aside for messing up. Instead, Jesus provides profound encouragement, offers him a brand new vision, and gives him a second chance. It's a really powerful reminder that true leadership and true love restores rather than condemns. Okay, so how do we practically apply this? Our source provides a fantastic 4-step response plan. First, remember your initial goal, like why did you even start in the first place? Second, look past the obstacle, just like MLK Jr. did. Third, start again by leaning on your faith companions. We cannot survive failure alone. We desperately need people who will pull us up and offer us that second chance. And fourth, you have to audibly declare, I will start again. It's an active, willful choice to rise up from the ashes. As we start to wrap this up, Michael Lindbergh frames this whole concept perfectly. He says, we all achieve success through failure. Notice he doesn't say we achieve success in spite of failure. He specifically says through failure. This perfectly validates that yes, the sting of failure is very real and it hurts, but it also cements our core thesis for today. Failure is not a detour away from success, it's a mandatory universal ingredient for it. You literally have to pass through it to get where you want to go. Which brings us full circle to this really profound thought from 1 Peter 1:7. Faith refined by fire is more precious than gold. Think back to our opening story about the shipwrecked man. The fire that burned down his hut felt like the literal end of his world. But that fire was doing something absolutely essential. The fire of our trials, our massive, painful failures, is actually refining us. It's burning away the non-essentials and creating a resilience, a character, and a faith that is of immense, lasting value. So as we finish off this explainer, I challenge you to immediately reframe your current struggles as stepping stones. Lead on your community, look over the hill, and actively declare that you are going to start again. Because I want to leave you with this one provocative question to chew on. What fire in your life right now is actually a smoke signal for your next beginning?